The twin moons of Carvath hung low over the canyon ridge, casting silver shadows across the patrol route. Sergeant Vale adjusted the strap of her pulse rifle, her boots crunching softly against the rust-colored sand. Behind her, the rest of Delta. Squad moved in practiced silence, 5 humans threading through alien terrain like ghosts. They weren't alone. Perched on Vale's shoulder, small claws gripping the reinforced padding of her combat vest, was Tiri. The Carvathi cub was no larger than a terrier, but her species would grow to become apex predators, 9 feet of muscle, fang, and lethal grace. Right now, though, Tiri was 3 months old, her spotted fur still soft, her amber eyes blinking drowsily in the moonlight. "Sarge," whispered Corporal Mendez from behind. "The kid still awake?" Vale glanced at the cub. Tiri's head had begun to droop, her small snout tucking against Vale's neck. The sergeant felt the warm puff of breath against her skin. "Barely," Vale murmured. It had been an accident, really. The patrol was supposed to be routine, sweep the northern perimeter, check for syndicate scouts, return by dawn. But halfway through, they'd stumbled upon an abandoned Carvathi den. Inside, they'd found Tiri, alone and mewling, her mother nowhere in sight. The squad had debated. Protocol said leave native wildlife alone. But Tiri had looked at Vale with those wide, intelligent eyes, and something in the sergeant's chest had tightened. The Carvathi were humanity's newest allies, their warriors fighting alongside human forces against the syndicate occupation. Leaving a cub to die felt like betrayal. So Vale had scooped her up. Tiri had climbed immediately onto her shoulder as Carvathi young did with their parents and refused to budge. That was 2 hours ago. Now the cub's breathing had slowed. Her tiny claws relaxed their grip. Vale felt the full weight of her settle against her shoulder and neck. Maybe 10 pounds, but awkward, unbalanced. The cub's head lolled, her small body going completely limp in sleep. "She's out," Vale said quietly. Private Chen snorted softly from the left flank. "You gonna carry her the whole way back?" Vale's jaw set. "We've got 4 more clicks to checkpoint Gamma. She's not slowing us down." That was only partially true. Tiri's weight threw off Vale's center of gravity. Every step required micro-adjustments to keep the cub from sliding. The sergeant couldn't turn her head fully to the right. Her rifle had to be held in a modified grip to avoid jabbing the sleeping cub. But Vale had carried wounded soldiers through worse. They moved on. The canyon narrowed, forcing them into single file. Vale led, her HUD displaying topographical data and friendly markers. The night was quiet except for the whisper of wind through stone and the occasional chirp of native insects. Somewhere in the distance, a Carvathi apex, a full-grown predator, called out, its roar echoing across the cliffs. Tiri didn't even stir. "She trusts you," said Lieutenant Park, matching Vale's pace. The lieutenant was their xenobiologist, attached to Delta Squad for cultural liaison purposes. Carvathi cubs only sleep that deeply near their parents. "She thinks you're her mother." Vale said nothing, but something warm flickered in her chest. They climbed a steep incline, boots finding purchase on loose scree. Vale's thighs burned. Tiri was a warm, dead weight on her shoulder, her small body radiating heat like a furnace. Sweat trickled down Vale's spine beneath her armor. She didn't complain, didn't slow. At the top of the ridge, Mendez called a halt. "Movement, 300 meters east." The squad dropped into defensive positions. Vale knelt smoothly, one hand coming up to steady Tiri. The cub mumbled something in her sleep, a soft churring sound, but didn't wake. Vale brought up her rifle scope. 3 figures moved through the canyon below, humanoid, but wrong. Syndicate troops in their distinctive gray armor, sweeping the area with handheld scanners. "They're searching for something," Park whispered. Vale's mind raced. The den. They'd found the den and were tracking Tiri. If the syndicate got their hands on a Carvathi cub, they'd use her as leverage against the native population. The alliance would fracture. "We move," Vale said. "Fast and silent. Chen, your rear guard. Anyone follows, you signal." They descended the far side of the ridge, moving with renewed urgency. Vale's shoulder ached. Tiri had somehow gotten heavier, her compact body pressing down like a sandbag. The cub's claws twitched in her sleep, pricking through the padding. Vale gritted her teeth and pushed on. 2 clicks. The terrain opened into a rocky plain dotted with crystalline formations that glowed faintly in the moonlight, beautiful and exposed. No cover for 300 meters. Sarge, Mendez said, tension in his voice. We're sitting ducks out here. I know, double time. They ran. Vale's breath came hard, her legs pumping. Tiri bounced on her shoulder, a warm, furry burden that threw off every stride. The sergeant's hand clamped over the cub protectively, holding her in place. Behind them, shouts erupted. The syndicate had spotted them. Plasma bolts shrieked overhead, superheating the air. The squad scattered, zigzagging between crystal formations. Vale ran straight, unwilling to risk a sharp turn that might dislodge Tiri. A bolt struck the ground beside her, spraying molten sand. Vale didn't flinch. Contact rear. Chen's voice crackled over the comm. 4 hostiles closing fast. Vale's jaw clenched. They were a click from checkpoint Gamma. 1 click from safety, from reinforcements, from getting Tiri to people who could care for her properly. She ran harder. Her lungs screamed. Her shoulder was numb. Tiri slept on, oblivious, her small body warm and trusting against Vale's neck. The checkpoint appeared ahead, a fortified bunker with human and Carvathi flags. Floodlights snapped on, illuminating the plain. A voice boomed over loudspeakers in both languages. Identify. Delta Squad, Vale gasped. Friendlies inbound, hostiles pursuing. The bunker's autocannons swiveled. A moment later, thunder rolled across the plain as the guns opened up. The syndicate troops scattered, retreating into the darkness. Vale stumbled through the checkpoint gate and dropped to one knee, gasping. Her whole body shook with exhaustion. On her shoulder, Tiri finally stirred, yawning widely to display rows of needle-sharp teeth. The cub looked around, confused, then chirped happily and nuzzled Vale's cheek. Lieutenant Park appeared beside them, smiling. I've contacted the Carvathi liaison. They're sending Tiri's aunt. She was searching for her. Vale nodded, unable to speak. She carefully lifted the cub from her shoulder, every muscle protesting. Tiri chirped again, her small paws reaching for Vale's face. You did good, Sarge, Mendez said, clapping her uninjured shoulder. 4 clicks with a passenger, under fire. That's hardcore. Vale looked at Tiri, at those bright, trusting eyes. The cub chirped once more, then yawned again, ready to fall back asleep. She needed to get home, Vale said simply. We don't leave anyone behind. Even if they're sleeping on your shoulder.